The United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury,
the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history.
Our military in the Middle East is undertaking an unprecedented operation to eliminate Iran's ability to threaten Americans, as they've been doing for nearly half a century.
Tonight, the White House is signaling that Operation Epic Fury is entering a heavier phase, deeper strikes, more sorties, and a wider target list inside Iran. Reports circulating from U.S. briefings describe thousands of strikes in under a week and a sharp drop in Iran's ability to track, coordinate, and respond in real time. But here is the detail that changes the temperature. This is not being framed as a single-night punishment. It is being framed as a sustained dismantling effort, targeting air defenses, command nodes, drone infrastructure, naval assets, and the supply web behind them. And if those claims hold, the next question becomes immediate. What does Iran still have left that can impose costs fast before the window closes? The U.S. military is citing 3 headline metrics: over 3,000 targets struck and 43 Iranian vessels damaged or destroyed since the operation began. The language suggests this is not only about airspace, but also about maritime denial across key waterways. At the same time, officials and analysts are pointing to a familiar battlefield pattern. Once the radar picture collapses and command becomes fragmented, the fight shifts from stopping the raids to finding a way to make the raids politically expensive, through oil disruption, regional strikes, or pressure points that do not require air superiority. In the next 12 minutes, we are going to break down what the United States says it has hit and why those targets matter, how electronic warfare and layered defenses are shaping the kill chain, and what second-order effects are already showing up, from shipping routes to munitions production, and what the next 24 to 72 hours could look like. Start with geography and timing. This operation is being discussed in the context of Gulf lanes, the Strait of Hormuz, and the air corridors feeding strikes into Iran. When the maritime environment tightens, everything changes. Insurance, routing, tanker schedules, and the political pressure that follows from energy prices. Multiple reports also indicate the campaign is being executed with an emphasis on Iran's enabling layer, air defense sites, drone storage and launch networks, missile infrastructure, and the nodes that connect sensors to shooters. The United States narrative says the first week produced disproportionate effects because early strikes hit the systems that allow Iran to see, decide, and move, rather than simply hitting individual launchers. If that description is accurate, 3 near-term outcomes would be expected. Iranian drones and missiles become less coordinated and more sporadic. Iran's navy becomes risk-averse, dispersing or sheltering. And retaliation shifts outward, toward regional bases, proxy networks, and economic pressure, rather than a direct symmetrical fight. That is also where the oil picture enters immediately. Even without a full closure, any friction around Hormuz can push a global price response. Now consider the mechanism. The material you provided emphasizes United States airborne electronic attack, jamming, and disruption, alongside precision strikes. In practical terms, this turns Iran's defense problem into a timing problem. If a defense network cannot maintain a stable tracking picture, it cannot build a reliable intercept plan. This also explains why the naval component matters. Iran's drones and missiles do not exist in isolation. They rely on staging, queuing, and logistics, fuel, spare parts, storage sites, launch preparation, and communications links. When maritime platforms and coastal infrastructure begin to disappear from the picture, Iran's operational options compress. One of the focal points being discussed publicly is the Iranian drone carrier vessel Shahid Bagheri, a conversion project designed to extend drone operations and presence at sea. Reports in recent days have described strikes and imagery connected to that platform. Shahid Bagheri represents one of Iran's most significant naval aviation platforms, and it was reportedly commissioned in February 2025. From there, the logic of the operation becomes clearer. Degrade the platforms that launch and sustain drones, then constrain the remaining operational routes. That also connects directly to the emphasis on counter-drone economics, shifting away from expensive interceptors whenever possible and toward cheaper solutions that can still remove drones from the sky. Ukraine was referenced in the source material not as a direct frontline participant, but as a technical reference point. Years of large-scale drone warfare forced rapid development of anti-drone tactics, and those lessons are now influencing how militaries think about defending against high-volume drone pressure. There is another mechanism embedded in the discussion: escalation management. In this framing, United States forces are not only striking targets, they are also signaling that certain capabilities remain unused. Not because those capabilities do not exist, but because the campaign is unfolding in phases. Whether that involves laser systems, additional bomber mass, or expanded carrier aviation, the underlying message remains the same. Phase 1 strips away Iran's ability to fight coherently. Phase 2 focuses on persistence and volume. Now listen to the military framing coming from senior voices.
We want to bring in the big ones, the B-52s, the B-1 bombers, and they are flying now almost at will. I would argue that we have actually achieved air supremacy, not just air superiority.
Now escalation. What happens when a military campaign starts colliding with economics, alliances, and production? First, shipping and oil. Even partial disruption, delays, reroutes, perceived risk pushes costs upward, and when price pressure rises, the political timeline compresses. That's why this operation is being discussed not only in terms of targets hit, but also in terms of how fast the market risk can be stabilized. Second, munitions and sustainment. A sustained campaign forces production decisions fast, especially for interceptors, standoff munitions, and the air defense stockpiles of regional partners. Third, casualties and domestic tolerance. The public story of total control always collides with the reality that retaliation doesn't need symmetry. If Iran can't stop sorties, it can still try to impose costs through drones, missiles, proxies, and pressure on regional basing. Fourth, intelligence shaping. When conflicts widen, targeting and technical support becomes its own battlefield. Queuing, navigation data, spoofing, and assistance that helps systems find targets before defenses can react. Fifth, output rate. A reduction in daily launch volume changes the rhythm. Whether it reflects stock depletion, disrupted command, damaged infrastructure, or a deliberate pause, the consequence is the same. When output drops, defenders get time to reinforce and reposition. And then you get the political message, loud and clear.
Iran were doing very well. Somebody said, how would you score it from 0 to 10? I said, I'd give it a 12 to a 15. Their army is gone. They're just about, look, their navy is gone. Their communications are gone. Their leaders are gone. 2 sets of their leaders are gone. They're down to their 3rd set. Their air force is wiped out entirely. Think of it. They have 32 ships. All 32 are at the bottom of the ocean. Other than that, they're doing very well, Coach.
That kind of language does 2 things at once. It projects momentum, and it tries to pre-frame the end state as already decided. But it also invites the obvious counterpunch. If one side claims dominance, the other side reaches for asymmetric leverage, oil disruption, regional strikes, or one high-impact event meant to change the political weather. So what actually changes after this first week if the operational picture being described is holding? First, Iran's defense problem becomes structural, not tactical. If the sensor-to-shooter chain is broken, radars suppressed, communications degraded, command disrupted, then one more launcher doesn't fix the air picture. Second, the maritime contest becomes a pressure campaign. If naval assets are being steadily removed from play, the remaining threat leans toward mines, drones, and coastal missiles, tools that create risk without demanding fleet-on-fleet confrontation. Third, the center of gravity shifts to time, a campaign framed as no timeline still runs into timelines. Energy, alliance tolerance, munitions, stockpiles, basing security, and domestic politics. And that's why the 3,000 targets and 43 vessels claims matter beyond the headline. The message is acceleration toward an end state. Now, the watch list. 3 things to track over the next 24 to 72 hours. First, Hormuz friction indicators. Look for measurable signs, tanker reroutes, insurance spikes, port slowdowns, or official advisories. Even without a full closure, persistent uncertainty can keep prices elevated. Second, air defense stockpiles and resupply decisions. If Gulf partners start talking publicly about interceptor shortages and emergency replenishment, that's a sign the threat picture is still costly, even if strike volume is degrading Iran's launch capacity. Third, retaliation pattern shifts. Watch whether responses concentrate on regional bases, infrastructure, or shipping, because that's where asymmetric pressure can scale without requiring air parity. Which variable decides the next phase, OIL, defense, or retaliation?